Being a husband and a father is more than just a title, it is a commitment, a duty, and a promise to protect and nurture one's family.
If you're out there, just come back. Like, if somebody has her, just please bring her back.
A real man provides security, love, and stability for those who depend on him. Chris Watts had that responsibility, but instead of honoring it, he betrayed it in the most unthinkable way. He wasn't just a man who made mistakes, he was a man who chose deception, manipulation, and ultimately, murder over the life he had built. Before the murders, he was leading a double life. On the surface, he appeared to be a loving husband and father, but behind the scenes, he was emotionally detached, financially strained, and deeply involved in an affair. Shannon Watts, who was 15 weeks pregnant with their third child, had begun to sense that something was wrong in their marriage. She had always been open about their relationship struggles, often sharing their lives on social media, portraying an image of a happy family. However, in private, she was worried about Chris' distant behavior. During a trip to North Carolina in the summer of 2018, Shannon noticed a significant change in Chris. He wasn't affectionate, he avoided conversations, and he showed little interest in her pregnancy. She repeatedly reached out to him, asking if he was still in love with her. Chris reassured her, but his actions told a different story. During this time, Chris was deeply involved with Nicole Kessinger, a co-worker at Anadarko Petroleum. Their relationship had escalated quickly, going from casual conversations to a passionate affair within weeks. Kessinger later claimed she believed Chris was already in the process of divorcing Shannon, but in reality, he was lying to both women. Chris showered Nicole with attention, going on romantic trips, exchanging love letters, and even discussing a future together. He was also secretly spending money on her, which worsened the financial strain already present in his household. Financial trouble. The Watts family was in deep financial distress. They had previously declared bankruptcy, were behind on their mortgage, and had mounting credit card debt. Chris' spending on his mistress only made things worse. Cold and distant, Shannon confided in friends and family that Chris was acting strangely. He was no longer interested in intimacy and was avoiding her calls while she was away on a business trip to Arizona. Deleting evidence, Chris tried to cover his tracks by deleting text messages and phone calls with Nicole, but investigators later recovered them. Searching for a new life, just days before the murders, Chris was looking up how to start a new relationship online and researching vacation spots with Kessinger. On August 12, 2018, Shannon returned from a business trip late at night. She had been texting Chris throughout the weekend, begging for honesty about his feelings. That night, she arrived home to a man who had already made up his mind about what he was going to do. Within hours, their lives would change forever. On August 13, 2018, in Frederick, Colorado, Chris Watts committed one of the most chilling crimes in recent history. His pregnant wife, Shannon Watts, had just returned home from a business trip when he strangled her in their bedroom. Their daughters, Bella, 4, and Celeste, 3, were still alive when he transported their mother's body to an oil field owned by his employer, Anadarko Petroleum. Once there, he smothered both children and disposed of their bodies in oil tanks, burying Shannon in a shallow grave nearby. Middle hook, the lie that broke everything. Just when Chris Watts thought he was in control, the investigators threw him off balance with one simple statement: "Chris, you failed the polygraph." His face tightened, his confidence cracked, and the weight of his lies began crushing him. For days, he had spun a web of deception. Claiming Shannon took the kids, acting like a worried husband, and even casually ordering pizza during his police interview as if nothing was wrong. But now, the mask was slipping. The detectives knew he was lying. His mistress was talking. His timeline was crumbling. And with nowhere left to run, the truth was about to come out. So what did Chris do next? Instead of confessing, he tried one last desperate move, throwing his own wife under the bus in a final, unforgivable lie. Let's break down the moment his story completely fell apart. Initially, Chris reported his family missing and pleaded for their safe return on television. His act was short-lived as investigators quickly unraveled his deception, leading to his eventual confession and life sentence in prison. Chris Watts didn't just wake up one day and decide to lie, he had been deceiving those around him for years. To the outside world, he was a dedicated husband and father. Behind closed doors, he was detached, emotionally distant, and already planning a new life. His affair with Nicole Kessinger wasn't just an impulsive mistake, it was the catalyst for a carefully orchestrated deception meant to erase his past and create a new future without his family. Chris searched online for how to start a new relationship while his pregnant wife was desperately trying to save their marriage. He transferred secret funds to prepare for his escape and even looked up ways to get out of child support. He wanted the world to see him as a victim, but in reality, he was methodically erasing his old life. He deceived his mistress, Nicole Kessinger. She believed he was a loving father in the final stages of a divorce. She had no idea that Shannon was 15 weeks pregnant when she and the girls went missing. In an interview, Kessinger stated, "He's a liar. He lied about everything." Chris portrayed himself to her as a victim of a failed marriage, concealing his ongoing relationship with Shannon. He misled Nicole Kessinger into believing he was separated and finalizing a divorce, when in reality, he was still living with his wife and children. This manipulation extended to his claims about his family life, painting a picture far from the truth. When the truth started closing in, Chris made a desperate attempt to salvage his image by blaming Shannon. His initial confession claimed she had killed their daughters, and he'd lost control in response. This was a cowardly lie designed to destroy her reputation even in death. Investigators and forensic evidence proved otherwise. Chris murdered all three of them in a calculated act. He wanted the world to believe he was just a grieving father, but in reality, he was their executioner. Chris Watts didn't grieve. He didn't panic. He didn't even try to make his lies believable. Instead, he meticulously staged a facade of concern, texting Shannon's phone, pretending she was still alive, and calling her friends to feign worry. He casually discussed sports with his co-workers, flirted with Nicole, and even planned future trips while his family's bodies were hidden away. His lack of genuine emotion was chilling. During police interviews, he smiled nervously, cracked jokes, and tried to maintain control of the narrative. His only concern was avoiding consequences, not the lives he had taken. His lies weren't just to police, he lied to everyone. Chris Watts wasn't just lying to investigators, he was lying to everyone around him. He had hidden the true state of his marriage from friends and family. He misled Shannon about their financial struggles. He told Nicole that he was already in the process of divorcing Shannon when, in reality, she had no idea. Even after his arrest, he tried manipulating his own family for sympathy. Chris was a master manipulator who thought he could control the narrative. But his lies weren't just careless, they were desperate. He underestimated how quickly he would be caught. Chris believed he could get away with it. He disposed of the bodies in a remote location, hoping they'd never be found. He thought that by pretending to be a worried husband, he could fool the police. But he didn't account for his neighbor's security footage showing him loading his truck early in the morning. His suspicious body language during interviews. The failed polygraph test that sealed his fate. The timeline inconsistencies that detectives quickly exposed. Chris Watts thought he was smarter than everyone else. He wasn't. Within days, his entire story fell apart, and the world saw him for what he truly was, a selfish, remorseless killer. After his incarceration, Chris Watts continued to manipulate narratives surrounding the murders of his pregnant wife, Shannon, and their two daughters. In handwritten letters, Watts described Shannon as a control freak, suggesting that her behavior drove him to seek affection elsewhere. He portrayed his affair with Nicole Kessinger as an escape from his tumultuous marriage, implying that his actions were a consequence of external pressures rather than personal choices. Watts' attempts to shift blame and rationalize his actions highlight a persistent refusal to fully accept responsibility. By casting himself as a victim of circumstance, he continues to distort the truth, undermining the gravity of his crimes and the profound impact on the victims' families. Chris Watts wanted to rewrite his life by erasing the family he had built. He believed he could fabricate a new reality, free from responsibility, financial struggles, and the weight of fatherhood. But his lies unraveled faster than he anticipated, exposing the depth of his deception. His case serves as a haunting example of how manipulation and narcissism can drive a person to unspeakable actions. The lies he told, both to himself and to the world, were not just desperate attempts to escape responsibility, but a testament to the fact that he never truly valued the people who loved him the most. In the end, Chris Watts wasn't just a man who murdered his family, he was a man who tried to manipulate the truth even after their deaths. And while he may spend the rest of his life behind bars, the world will never forget the web of lies he spun to cover up the unforgivable. What do you think was Chris Watts' biggest mistake in trying to deceive the police? Did he truly believe he could get away with it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you found this case compelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the minds of criminals who thought they could outsmart the law.